This message is sponsored by Greenlight. With school out, summer is the perfect time to teach our kids real-world money skills they'll use forever. Greenlight is a debit card and the #1 family finance and safety app used by millions of families, helping kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send their kids money and track their spending and saving, while kids build money confidence and skills in fun ways. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire? You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Kids, listen to your mother.
Mom!
Welcome to Between Us Moms with Katie Crafts-Morg and Hallie Stevens-Drake.
Hey, mamas. Today we've got someone truly special joining us. Brandi Jordan is a manifestation queen, a baby and parenting expert, a doula, owner of the multi-figure nanny agency, The Cradle Company, and no big deal, she's a mom to 3 who has been helping families navigate the wild ride of parenthood with more confidence, calm, and connection. Brandi's superpower, she makes mamas feel seen, and we are so happy to have her on the podcast with us today to talk about all the things. So Brandi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Oh, we're so happy and honored to have you. And we'll just dive right in. We have so many questions for you, so we got to maximize our time. First and foremost, what inspired you to be a doula and a parenting expert?
I love when people ask me this question because it found me. And so, I don't know, I thought I'd be doing like insurance sales or something. When I was in school, I'm from Texas. It's like I wanted that laptop and I wanted to dress in a suit, and that's what I thought I was going to be doing. And I took a child development class in my freshman year, changed my major from business to child development, but I still wasn't quite sure how I would use that. And this is back when we used to listen to the radio. I was in my car listening to NPR, and they talked about this old-timey career called midwifery. And I was like, what is this? I was 19. For whatever reason, these crazy midwives allowed a 19-year-old to come and train with them. And I loved it. My first experience was a water birth. This woman had a 10-pound baby. I was 19 years old, and I was just like, women are amazing. They are phenomenal. And it just took my breath away. And I still kind of felt like, but who's going to hire a 19-year-old? This isn't for me. And then I moved to LA, and my apartment, kid you not, ended up being next door to the Hollywood Birthing Center by accident on purpose. And they were like, oh, you want to be a doula? I was like, there wasn't a name for it back then. And I was like, I guess I do. And that's how I became a doula.
Wow.
And it just went from there. In the beginning, I wasn't even charging people because I felt like, just like, I like doing this. And finally, my mom was like, well, I think you kind of are busy all the time. It sounds like a job. You probably should charge people. And here we are 25 years later.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps.
Well, and I feel like over the past 25 years, so much has changed. I mean, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when it comes to babies and parenting. And since you've been in this for so long, what is the biggest shift you've seen? I feel like our parents are always like, oh, we didn't do that when you were little.
There's so many things. And I'm so thankful that I've been to be able to journey and see so many of those changes, some good, some bad. One of the things that I would say is that in 25 years, I've seen women claim their right to be nurtured and cared for in postpartum. Before it was just like only a few people, only super wealthy, and then maybe sometimes a couple of hippies. Like that's who my clientele was 25 years ago. And now I feel like any mom, Main Street, corporate mom, celebrity feels that they deserve and should have this care in postpartum. And so that's the amazing thing that I've seen happen in 25 years. It wasn't just like a special thing that some people could do or should be able to do. On the bad side, what I've seen happen in 25 years is So much more postpartum depression, so much more postpartum anxiety and postpartum mood disorders in general. I feel like that has probably tripled in the time that I've been doing this work. I actually went back to school. Being a doula made me go back and get my master's in social work because so many things were happening in the home. I was like, I'm not qualified to deal with this stuff that's happening. And I wish I could say that it's gotten better over the years. I think awareness has gotten better, but I feel like because of the pressure that people feel, what they see on Instagram and how it's supposed to look, or how people think it's supposed to look, I think it puts this pressure on people that they are not living up to it. And I've seen that manifest into a lot of postpartum mood disorders.
I'm a little teary-eyed hearing you talk about this. I don't want to speak for Hallie, but both of us did experience our own bouts with postpartum anxiety, depression. What do you attribute that rise to? Or do
I
you think
mean,
it's talking about it more?
it's twofold. Like I think that we're more aware. So maybe our moms were probably feeling that as well and just never talked about it and just thought it was normal. And there was no outlet for them. And so I think part of it is that it's actually just being named. On the other hand, I think it's social media, to be really honest.
Yeah.
When you see like, oh, you're supposed to have a six pack at 6 weeks, like what? Like, and I think that people think this painted picture of what postpartum looks like. And I want to tell them, I'm in a lot of homes. I probably work at this point with 3,000 babies. And I don't care, celebrity, billionaire, stay-at-home mom, works at Target, they're all like hormonal and leaking and fighting with their husbands. Like that is the norm. But people don't see that version. They see the like snapback and like she's already at the gym and she's doing Pilates and she has this beautiful husband and they're taking a trip, a baby moon to the south of France. And like people have this aspiration of what it's supposed to look like, which creates this level of letdown when it doesn't
Yeah.
feel that way for you, what you've seen it pictured on Instagram.
And then we feel like we have to also post that to show that we're
Exactly.
okay, even when we're not
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah. I remember wearing my newborn daughter, my in-laws came to meet her and I felt like I needed to be hosting and I put on
Mm-hmm.
a dress and we went to the to the observatory with the Hollywood sign and I made a full picnic. I mean, this was 2 weeks after my baby was born and I was like, I'm wearing a fucking diaper.
Girl, I would just
What?
basically have slapped you. Girl, go back home. What are you doing outside? But I think it's also that's the piece that's changed. Our parent generation had that part right. You stayed at home for 6 weeks, you didn't go outside. And I think somehow along the way, we've marketed that as like a punishment or like being kept at home, whereas it was a luxury to be able to have that. And I think somehow it got branded that like the new cool was to like be out and doing the thing and like that was good postpartum. But like I remember my mom telling me that she had to move in the house when you had a baby, you moved in with your mother-in-law or whoever that person was for your family and they took care of you and they went with a large dose of unwanted advice. However,
Yeah.
you did have like cooked meals, you weren't worrying about what to feed your toddler. You had someone showing you like this is what breastfeeding is supposed to look like. You had that red tint happening within your own family of origin. Most of us don't live near our families anymore. And so we don't have that little village. And so I think that's one thing that I see making a comeback. And I hope that it does this idea that like we're not meant to parent alone. It just was never supposed to be that way. And I think a lot of people are seeing the effects of that meant a lot more postpartum depression, isolation, not being able to compare and have someone tell you, like, no, you sit down, you lay down, I'm going to bring you that tea. You're not getting up to do that. And I think we need a lot more of that happening.
Is that the main piece of advice that you give to your clients as they are entering the postpartum season? Or what kind of advice are you giving them to help them? I don't even know if it's preventable because it's so hormonal to have this postpartum
Mm-hmm.
anxiety and depression, but what is the advice or how do you help women who are experiencing that?
Yeah, some of it is preventable. Just we've done like a lot of research on like some of the factors, people who are high risk. So, for example, if you already have a history of depression or anxiety previous to having children, then like I'm going to make sure I'm going to shore myself up. Just by having the plan in place, we know that it helps people feel like a reduction of that anxiety. Like just knowing like Susan's going to be there when I get home from the hospital, or my mom's coming 3 times a week to help with laundry. Just making a plan and having that village set up in advance in itself is preventative.
Mm.
The other things for a lot of people, they've never experienced any kind of mood disorder, not even expecting this, not on their radar, this could happen to them in postpartum. And so one of the things I think is important is that partners have to be educated on what that looks like because you can't necessarily see it in yourself. But the
So
people
true.
around you, the people who know you, need to be able to know what those are. So I feel like every child education class should go into it in detail. Your last doctor's visit, that last, 4 weeks when you're going every week, it should be mandatory that a partner is there to hear what these signs are. Now, we do have some things baked in when you have your baby's checkup. They ask moms questions about their mood and things like that. But there is a stigma, like some women are afraid to say that at the doctor's office. Like, are they going to take my baby away from me because I say that I'm crying all day? And so I think we have to have that internal family system set up to be able to see what that looks like. And so I talk a lot with partners, with dads, girlfriends, like, this is what you need to know about what it looks like. This is the range of normal, because it's normal to have baby blues. And this is what it looks like when it changes. And so I think it's just more education to people around you when you're having the baby to see what this looks like. So you kind of already have that game plan of like how you're going to support yourself. You already have a number of someone you can reach out to. So even if you have no history of this, one of the things I do when people are pregnant is start thinking about create your team. Like think about, like, I always make this analogy, like if you knew you were going to win the lottery, $1 billion in 5 weeks, like what preparation would you have? You'd get that team together before you go turn that ticket in. I think having a baby is like winning the lottery. It's the same thing. Like you have this amazing thing that's about to happen for you. Get your team together in advance so that anything that comes up, you're ready to deal with it. You're less likely to have something turn to something where you end up being hospitalized or even worse, like needing to be separated from your baby. And so, that's what I think the preventative game is.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is such good advice. And I feel like no one says that. Ooh,
Yeah.
Brandi. We are like 5 minutes in, and I feel like we've already learned so much.
I love it.
Wheels are turning because everything you say is sparking more questions in me. And I think one of them is, well, my pediatrician actually is the one that noticed that I wasn't okay because I did fill out that form, and he called my doctor and said, we need to do something here. And my husband couldn't recognize it because I think sometimes, in terms of like straight couples, men and women are so different, hard for them to even like grasp the concept of, this hormone drop and what we're actually going through. And I wanted to touch a little bit on maternity leave. US wide. There is such a gap, there is such a problem, there is such a shortage. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could speak to that a little bit and what you would like to see change in the US in terms of maternity and paternity leave.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it has improved in the time I've been doing this work, which is great, but not enough. I have the privilege, I live half time in the United States and half time in France. And so I'm able to see two vastly different approaches to supporting women and, postpartum. And so for me, it seems very simple. If you care about women and children, if you care about families, you make sure that those most valuable days and weeks postpartum, that people get to be with their babies, and 6 weeks isn't enough. And most people, if they aren't getting full pay, they can't even afford to take that 6 weeks. If it's given to them as like, you can take it, but you're not getting paid, it's not possible for a lot of people. And so I think there should be some kind of universal maternity leave for people. In France, you get usually about 4 months fully paid. And then beyond that, you could take more, but I think it's unpaid depending on what your company, who you work for, et cetera. But it's kind of universal for people. For people who are indigent or maybe not have as much money, there are still resources for them to be able to stay home with their babies. You do get a benefit when you are pregnant to be able to buy essentials. So I think, I don't know what the number is. I want to say it's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 that people get to be able to buy that stroller, get diapers. And so everyone's starting off with a minimum foundation. My academic background is in social work, and I get to see both sides. Like a doula, I see this most amazing beginning, and then in social work, you see kids not having such a good entry into life, and so much of that I see it's happening in those beginning stages when people need that scaffolding. And if we had that for families, we'd see a lot less people being readmitted after having a baby for having complications. We'd see less children getting into social services because people in desperation do desperate things. And so I feel like having that basic foundation for families is something that everyone should want because it affects all of us when people don't get those essentials in their beginning start to life.
Oh, I think about it from we are pretty privileged and my husband works a nice job, and I think about the single moms
Yeah,
often.
it's hard.
And it's honestly, it feels criminal to me that there's not more
Yeah,
support.
it's also the emotional things that I think we don't think about. Let's just say there's a single mom who can afford to stay home. Like maybe that exists. There does exist for some people.
Sure.
It's the emotional, like never endingness of new motherhood, that like every feeding, every diaper change, every sleepless night, having only yourself to do that. And I think people who are listening, who are dealing with that, understand it's like, who do you celebrate that way? Who do you commiserate with the fact that you haven't slept in 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months? And so I think it's the isolation that you can feel if you're a single parent. I know some people do that by choice, but it is still not having that second pair of hands or second set of income can be really detrimental to a lot of families. And so I feel like it's all families who need it, but obviously particularly people who are doing it on their own or who have children with special needs. Like it just compounds if you don't even have the basics to be able to rest your body, to recover, while also trying to, feed
Yeah.
and, house your family.
I know. I'm so interested. I mean, I feel like we could do an entire show on the difference between France and the US because
Everyone would
I
be really
had,
upset. It's going to make people cry. So.
I know. Well, let me tell you, I cried because I did pelvic floor therapy because I was peeing my pants every day and I was over it. And my physical therapist said to me, that is part of the healthcare program for new mothers in France is covered
Yes, it's
pelvic floor
part of your
therapy.
care. You
Yeah.
see, like in postpartum, I think around your 6 week mark when you get your checkup, you go see, there's a word for it, but I just call it the vagina lady. But you go and see her.
Technical
She's
term.
a kinesiologist, but she particularly works with
Yeah.
women's issues and that, so you go see her, and she checks you out to see where you're at. And then you go to these sessions, however many times they say you have it, it's covered by your insurance. I did it when my son was 4 years old. So I'm talking about 4 years postpartum. I was
Yeah.
still able to do this in France. They were just like, you didn't do this when you had your baby. I was like, I wish. So
Yeah.
not until my third baby did I do
Mm,
this. And I think about like, what if I would have had that after every child as part of my own care?
right.
That would have been so much better for my body. One of the things that I learned, I have a girlfriend who works in geriatric social work, and she said the number one reason that women are admitted generally to nursing homes is because of incontinence. And most that comes from not caring for our bodies in postpartum.
I believe that. I
It's
believe that.
insane.
That
It's
is
insane.
insane.
Yeah.
And
People don't even know that you can do that. And
Yeah.
also,
It's insane.
we don't even have really scheduled, we don't have a 6 month postpartum checkup. You have
right.
a
No.
6 week checkup
And
where
that's
you
it.
go
Yeah,
in
and they're
and
like, good
yeah,
luck
like,
out there.
okay, here's the
Yeah.
steps here.
So my doctor was like, here, you get 10 sessions to start with, signed off on it. I went to the pharmacy. They have you buy this thing. Basically, it's to help you do like these mechanical Kegels,
Mhm.
basically. I went to the pharmacy, gave them a note. They gave it to me. I didn't pay anything. I showed up to the lady. She hooked it up to a machine and like she basically did this thing for me. And I went twice a week and got it done. And she could say, like, okay, you need more, and your doctor's going to sign off on that. And you will get what you need. And so
Wow.
imagine had I had that, at 4 months versus when my kid was 4 years old.
Oh my gosh. Your
I
Kegels
feel
would
like,
be tight.
I know.
Yeah.
and I think we need so much more education and we need
Yeah.
so much more research. I went to my OB actually this week and I was telling her, every time I get my period, like maybe like every 3 months or so, I start experiencing what feels like a UTI, but it's not a
Hmm.
UTI. And she's like, well, you had a lot of scar tissue. I had two back-to-back C-sections. She said, you might have a little bit of endometriosis.
Mm.
Like, what do we do for that? There's really nothing we can do unless you like want to go and operate again and
Hmm.
there and that's a whole thing. And I was like, why aren't we studying this more?
Yeah.
We have to really care about women to study these things as a whole country. And so I think when you see, I think it was Nelson Mandela that said, like, you can see what a country's made of by how it treats its children.
Mm.
And so I think it's this idea, like, if we really care about women, we really care about children, then we would have these things in place that actually help us heal our bodies and do the thing that you need. So, for example, I have a friend who had some issues getting pregnant. So she needed to do in vitro in France that is covered under your insurance. I've had clients here who've had to mortgage their houses to make that happen because they so wanted to have children. But it was covered. Not only is it covered, but those shots you have to give yourself on a daily basis. A nurse came to her house and did that for her. But she never did
Wow.
that because that was part of the program. And she has a beautiful 7-year-old daughter at this point. And she was like, had I been in the United States, I would not have been able to afford to make this dream a reality. And I hate that this joy of parenthood for some people is really based on like where you're at socioeconomically.
Wow.
Well, and I feel like now these companies, sorry, I won't even get into it, but they like take advantage. Like
We could
it's so
talk all day.
Yeah,
it's
we
so
could.
expensive out here. It's ridiculous. And both
Yeah.
Hallie and I did do IVF, and we both welcomed each one of our children via IVF. And thank God, our insurance at the time did cover it, but it only covered a certain amount of cycles or like one
Yeah.
cycle, and then I switched to my husband. It's a whole thing out here, and it's like a game. Wow.
Yeah,
We
it's a
need
mental puzzle.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we could talk to you forever. I feel like we've gone on tangents because
I
I
know.
just,
Sorry.
there's so much to discuss. But I do want to ask you, just for our listeners who are pregnant and, um, about to face the postpartum season. We've already talked
Mhm.
about postpartum depression, things they can do to kind of set themselves up for success there, building their teams. What are other pieces of advice that you would give to women who are either in recovery, they've already had their baby, or are
Mhm.
about to give birth?
So for the ones that are pregnant, and this is going to sound really simple, but it's not, expect the best.
Oh,
I
I
think
love
that
that.
there's so much of social media that talks about how terrible it is and like I have no time and I haven't slept it. And it also is super amazing. It's some of the best years of my life. And I wish I could have that time back when they were small and snuggly and we were a little sleep deprived. It was amazing. And I think what gets prioritized in the algorithm is how terrible it is and how tired you are and how much you're going to fight with your husband. But it also can look like seeing your husband become a father as one of the most beautiful, sexiest things in the world. That's amazing. Seeing how you become as parents is amazing. And so I would say surround yourself with people who are willing to give you that viewpoint of parenthood, to give you that viewpoint of birth, because it really does affect how you see things and how you actually create for yourself. I always expected for it to be amazing. I expected for it not to be easy, but manageable. And that's what it was. And I think a lot of that has to do with like who I was surrounded by, who my husband is, like how my family approached, like this is something that everyone does and it's an amazing thing. And so I think a lot of times it can be really easy to go down the rabbit hole of how terrible it could be, but there are so many great outcomes. And so if you're pregnant, focus on that, follow those accounts, listen to those stories. Don't listen to people's doom and gloom. That's my biggest piece of advice.
I needed to hear that.
I
And I love
love
that
that.
we go back and forth about if we want a third. And
You
I think
do. It's
it's a
amazing.
hard
I have three.
time.
My biggest regret is not having four, honestly.
Really?
It is. I wish I would have had four. Like I was thinking about during the pandemic. My husband's like, "You're just bored. Stop. Like we're good." Like, but now, like I wish I would have done it. The kid would have been like in kindergarten. Would have been like good. By
Oh,
now we'd have
Yeah.
had our freedom again.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that if you want the kids, you want to have them. Have them. Um, it definitely is fun and it's full. I was at a friend's party the other day and she has three siblings. All of them have like three or four kids. And her parents came and I was like, this is why you have three or four kids. Like this feeling. I can imagine myself being like 70 and seeing my grandkids and my kids and their spouses and like having that, it's worth like a few nights of no sleep, I would say. Um, so do
Absolutely.
it is what I would say. Now, for people in postpartum, question asked, what do I say to people in postpartum?
mhm.
Get the help that you need. Like, don't wait. Don't tough it out. Like, if your nipples are sore, call someone. If you're peeing yourself, call someone. If you feel like your baby's not sleeping enough, call someone. There is a resource now for most things. People have to be willing to go out and get that help. If you don't know where to find it, talk to your savvy. There's always one girlfriend in your group that knows about all the resources.
Yeah.
Figure out who that person is in your circle. If you don't have one, find her. That's your postpartum job, is to find her. But there's always one person like that that has the connections, that knows this person and talk to that person, because that to me is like gold when you're a new mom, like what school to apply to, where they're having like the sale on the baby clothes, like having that information feels less isolating. You feel like you're a part of something. So in postpartum, your job is to get the help that you need so you heal faster and you can spend that time connecting to your baby.
Oh, the best advice. God, I wish I talked to you when I was
I
pregnant.
know. I'm like, can
Well,
you be
get
my
pregnant again and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
I, I want to jump into another phase of life for moms with
Okay.
like littles who might be a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
Food. I feel like there's so much on the internet right now about food and sugars and dyes and processed food and behavior. How much of what kids eat actually shows up in their behavior and mood? And is there anything that you are telling moms not to do or to do when it comes
Mhm.
to their food?
Yeah, I love this question. So one of the things my mom used to say that my grandpa used to always say that every generation is weaker and wiser.
Mm.
And I was like, what does that mean? It's just like you have all this extra information, but you have no idea what to do with it. Like we get all this extra stuff that makes us more confused. We have less connection to like intuition about what's supposed to happen. I think it's so true for our generation. Here's what I tell moms, you do not need a PhD to feed your child. So
Right.
if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's probably because you're taking in too much information. I think the other thing that people forget is that food is one of the biggest cultural expressions that each of us have. So what
Mhm.
I'm feeding my kid, what Hallie's feeding her kid, like it probably should be different because we have different families, we have different families of origin. Most of us should be eating a diet similar to what our ancestors ate. And so we all can't follow exactly the same diet because maybe our bodies don't process it the same. And so one thing I would be saying is talk to your grandma, talk to your aunties, figure out like what people were doing 60 years ago, 100 years ago. There's probably something in there, some little jewels that's actually really perfect for you and your child. And so I definitely feel like people, this is the time to have those conversations, to bring back those recipes. Because a lot of that, there was some wisdom into why they fed people certain things at certain times. Like, indigenous, hunters gatherers, like they went and got a certain type of fish when a woman was pregnant because they knew that she needed the fat from that salmon or whatever that they were giving her at that time. And so there's a lot of wisdom in what people were eating during those times when food wasn't as abundant. You can go into Costco and stock yourself up. So that's one thing that I say is that, standard American diet, there may be things on there that work for you, but really be thinking about what feels good to you, what digests well, what you ate at like family gatherings. Some of that's probably going to be great for your child. When
Mm.
it comes to sugars and things like that, it's everything in moderation.
Yeah.
If you're, and it's also about talking about how we're talking about sugar. Is it processed sugar? Or are you talking about like you actually went and baked a cake? Are we
Right.
talking about gummy bears? That's going to be a difference in like what you're giving them. And it's creating the balance. So I talk a lot to my clients about really training their palate, and so that means having a variety, even when you're pregnant, because they're getting that when you're pregnant, they're getting pieces of that. If you decide to nurse your child, they're also getting those flavors through your breast milk. And so having a varied diet is what we like to see for them because it's going to help them long term to be able to not have certain allergies, to like different foods and different textures. And so it's balance is the most important.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of talk on the internet about like toddler led weaning or something like that. I think people are that's
Oh,
how they're
Oh,
baby
using
led
it,
weaning.
baby-led
baby
weaning.
led weaning or
Yeah.
something. And I always tell people it's like fancy terms that all mean the same thing that we've always said for the past 100 years. And it's like, yes, it's okay if your kid wants to pick up some food and try some things. Like I don't believe in like baby food versus people food. It's a different texture of what we're eating.
Hmm.
And so, I was lucky that I married a Frenchman who's an amazing cook. And so, our kids grew up eating the French way. And so I've actually learned a lot myself because I kind of more had the American diet growing up and what kids are able to eat and what they should be having. And so, like, my daughter wasn't having like, smashed carrots. She was having like tomato basil soup when she was
Mm.
7 months old,
Cute.
and like her love of food that I see now as a 10-year-old, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. These are things I would never try that she's trying because her palate's been attuned to that.
Hmm.
So I would just say lots of different foods, different vegetables, trying to also try eating in the season because it allows you to try different things that you wouldn't normally try if you kind of think about what would happen in the season. Something also I learned, I remember going to the grocery store, I'm like, I want to get kale. They were like, you don't have kale this time of year. And I was like, oh, well, we don't know the seasons. I can get things I want anytime in the US.
Right.
So I didn't know the seasons.
Hmm.
And so I started to be able to see like, okay, you're able to kind of eat more foods and variety if you're doing it that way. And so obviously you can have as many mangoes as you want year round, but if you can start paying attention to that, it's going to allow you to come up with different things that your kids can try. And so try the rainbow, eat culturally if that makes sense for your family, and try some new things and take the pressure off yourself of getting it right.
Mm.
Oh, moms need to hear that, taking the pressure off.
I know.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I have to make sure they have protein and a
I know.
veggie. And my toddler,
Basic.
I just want butter pasta and nothing else eaten. I'm like,
I'll have
okay.
a chicken nugget, please.
Well,
And
there's a lot of kids in Italy having butter pasta every night, and they're doing just
right.
fine over there.
That's
And you
right.
know what? I am 25% Italian, so maybe that
No,
is,
that's culturally what you probably should be eating.
That's right.
yeah,
Look, there
It's
you
okay.
really
go.
true though. It's like it's probably what you should be eating. 10 things that you tend to crave, or things you tend to like not want. Either your body doesn't want that thing or culturally it's not what you end up like. I like pasta, but my husband loves pasta and he's European and they have it all the time. It's like we have a difference and like I really love rice. And I think ancestrally, my people are probably eating rice and grains
Yeah.
wherever they came from. So
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredelioQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit quattrodog.com.
so it makes a lot of sense.
It does. You know, we were talking a little bit ago about just like the pressure on moms and everything we're seeing on social media. And it feels so kismet that you decided to come on and then this announcement was made that I think has women everywhere feeling a lot of anxiety. And we're talking about the Tylenol. And this affects the women you're working with specifically. What advice could you give to our listeners who are just feeling anxiety about that?
Yes, I mean, it's unfortunate. I feel like, depending on where you live in the world, media can be done differently. And what I've seen when I've spent many years outside the States versus being inside is that we tend to have a lot of doom and gloom on our news cycle. Like, guess what? At 5 o'clock, here's a new way that you can be killed. Like if you eat this thing, if you do this thing, coming up at 5, and so it's that constant thing. There's always something to be worried about, which obviously is not great for anybody, but definitely pregnant bodies or those that are taking care, of small children, because you basically are creating lots of stress hormones for yourself. And so what I would say about this is I believe there's a place for science. There's a place for just intuition as well. Children have had autism before we had Tylenol. So, when you talk about causation and why things happen, it's, you want to be talking to people that you trust to actually look at the science behind what these things are. I want women to hear they did not cause their children's autism. I used to work with special needs kids. I worked, in social work. And so I worked with a lot of children who were on the spectrum at various, ends of the spectrum. And I think that we're pathologizing something that is not to be pathologized. It's a way that someone is maybe different from me or you, but it's not necessarily something that we want to fix in people. And I think that's the message that people are getting, that like, if you don't take this thing, you're not going to get a kid that turns out this way. Children with autism don't need to be fixed. There are ways that their brains work differently than ours, but it doesn't mean that they are any less than. And I think that's what hurts me the most about these kind of proclamations, because it tells people who have autism, it tells people who have children who have autism that there's something wrong with it, that it should be fixed. And some of the people that I've met who have autism are some of the smartest, brightest, most empathic people who just, their brains work differently than myself or yours. And so I would just continue to reiterate that. As far as the anxiety, I think we sometimes have to make the decision to turn things off, to prioritize our own mental health and that of our children. And so I do look at some things on social media. I do want to read about the news, but I will find my own way to get that news that's not as inflammatory. Like I'm going to find the place that I feel is going to give me a very neutral, balanced account of what's happening. And I would tell a lot of people who have young children to do that. And you might just have to turn some things off and get around people who don't want to perpetuate these things that are just to scare families and don't give any real antidote. So just, having these kind of proclamations like doesn't actually help someone who has a child with autism. It hasn't helped them. It didn't come up with something that's going to, help them deal with some of the issues that maybe make it more difficult for someone who has autism on some parts of the spectrum. So I would tell people to just remember that there's nothing wrong with having autism. It's not something that has to be fixed. Definitely some people do things that they need to manage some of their children's symptoms. If it's hard for them to communicate or there are other things that are going on. But even with that, I just go back to this idea that I believe that most of our children picked us. Wherever they came from, they picked us. And, if you ask anyone who has a child with autism or has a child that has special needs, they will tell you it's been the biggest gift for them. Even though it was difficult, the things they've learned about themselves, about their child, and the way their child sees the world has been something that's been beautiful for them. And so for that, I would tell people to lean into that versus someone who's telling you that you've caused something that is just a natural occurrence.
Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful response. I have heard mothers feel very emotional and very sad because they are worried they did this to their child. So
Mhm.
what a beautiful thing to say. Thank you for that.
You are incredible.
I know.
Like
Gosh.
hearing that, and I have friends with children on the spectrum. I have family members with children on the spectrum. And so hearing you say that, I think is going to be so helpful right now in a time where, like you said, social
Yeah.
media is just doom and gloom. The news is doom and gloom, and there's a lot of scariness out there. There's no other way.
Yeah. And social media isn't research. People have to remember that these aren't researched things,
Hmm.
And if someone said they did a study, how many people were in the study? Was it 3 people? Like you have to be thinking about how long was the study? Was it 6 days or was it 6 years?
Yeah,
And so if you look at actually peer-reviewed research, there's nothing that supports that Tylenol in any way
yeah.
has attributed to autism. There's just no research studies on this.
I want to change gears a little bit. You mentioned that your oldest, 18, leaving for
Hmm.
college. You have three children, and I'm so curious for all the moms that have kids at different stages in their life. What do you feel like you did as a mom to get your kid to this point where he's like ready to go to college, he's soaring high, he's ready to leave the nest? Is there anything that as a mom you feel most proud of?
I feel like I mean, I hope for everyone. One of the things that when I had him, like I had a great family of origin. I was one of the biggest things I could have had was love, and I had that, which was amazing. We had more love than money. So there's a lot of things that went along with that, but I was really loved. I didn't realize what a superpower that was to have been a kid who was unconditionally loved. And I didn't realize that until being adult and being around so many people who were dealing with trauma from, their family of origin. But with that being said, I always had this idea that whatever happens along these 18 years and when he's an adult, I want him to be happy. I want him to say that he enjoyed being our child in our home. And he's there. And I think the way I did that is that I had to heal myself. Even though I came from a great family, there's always things within your family of origins. You have to decide, what do I want to take and what do I want to like leave with my family of origin? And I feel like some of the things that I wanted to leave, I did leave behind. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that like my son will argue with me. He doesn't just do whatever I say. He has a point of view. He has an opinion. He doesn't feel like he has to have my same opinion. And I feel like that for me shows my own healing growth that he's as an adult can have this at 18. I'm very happy about that, that he's able to go toe to toe. He doesn't feel this need to feel how I feel or think how I think. And I hopefully attribute that to how we parented him.
Mm.
I love that. Critical thinking is so important. And yeah, having your own mind and questioning things. Again, what a beautiful answer.
You did
It's,
it.
yeah, I mean, almost. I feel like we're
Yeah.
still parenting them forever. Like I still need my mom and I'm 46. So
Yeah.
My
I don't
mom is
know.
upstairs right
It's
now.
over. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
my
always need
poor
your mom.
mom. I'm
Yeah.
like, I was like, I bet you didn't know what you were in for. Like when you
It's
were
like
praying to have a good
forever.
relationship with your daughter, bet you didn't
Yeah.
know I'd need her this much.
I saw you post about divorce, and I'm just so curious what your take is on divorce, children of divorce, how to kind of handle that, navigate that. We see a lot of stigma around divorce and a lot of parents staying together for the children.
I love my parents got divorced. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. I always tell people that.
Wow.
The best thing that ever happened to me is my parents getting divorced.
Wait, I feel
I
like
got
we
to see my mom become someone different
interesting.
Because
because my mom got married at
they
19 and
weren't
they were married for 20 something years. I never knew they were unhappy because I was little and my parents never argued. And so I think it was a shock to everyone they got divorced. But my mom became this person who didn't exist and her was with my dad. And so I got to become this amazing person because of who she became. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And I'm like thankful every day. I was like, thank you, mom, for getting divorced. Like, I love you for that. I always say that because it was for me life changing. I can see that because I have three sisters. Two of us were raised by both parents, and then two of us just the one. And they're the very different way that we move through the world. And a lot of that I attribute to having had a different existence. My dad is very patriarchal, very Southern man, and I feel like we got to have something different as women.
Mhm.
And so it didn't. There's nothing wrong with being patriarchal and being a Southern man, but I got to experience something different, and it did something in my life that allowed me to, sow my roots in a different way. And so
I
I feel like it was great.
that because I think
Yeah.
people often feel like you have to stay together for the kids. And really, you need to be happy as a
You have to be
parent.
happy.
Demonstrate that.
We had so much joy. Like I said, we had more love than money. There was times like we were evicted, we didn't have our lights on. And I remember not having lights. And I remember simply being like 7, and we were laughing so hard. We had candles, we're doing the thing. We had so much fun. And so I think a lot of people think they're staying for the financial stability or the whatever. We had joy and love. And it definitely made it an equalizer. And so I don't see that part of my childhood as being something bad. Like we didn't have any money yet sometimes, but I saw my mom make that change. Like over time, she went back to school. Like me and her graduated from college at the same time. And so like all these things, I got to see that. And it's like made me be the kind of woman who can do that. And also she prioritized herself, which gave me the ability to do that with my children. I can go to lunch, I can go on a trip and feel like I can do that because my mom showed me that it was possible to do that.
Well, we have taken so much of your time. I didn't even get to half the questions I have for you. So we may have to do a part 2 and have you back because I
I
have
would
so
love
much
that.
more. But if there was just one piece of advice or one thing you could leave every mom listening here today with one takeaway, what would that be?
I think you're doing better than you think you are. Well, I have 2. One, that you're always doing better than what you think you are. Like you think that you're not feeding right and you're not sleeping enough and you're not, showing up and being as pregnant as you are. You're probably doing better than you think that you are. And the other thing is that everything is a phase and it's not going to always be that way. And so your kid's going through a tantrumy phase. Just know it's a phase. It's not going to be that forever. You're not sleeping. It's a phase. But also, they're really tiny and they're cute, and that's a phase too. And so you want to savor those phases. It can sometimes feel like it's going to be never ending, like you're never going to sleep. You're never going to have that time that you had before with your partner. And just know that's always a phase. Like things will get back to a homeostasis. If you're feeling like, am I ever going to be able to go to the gym again? Am I ever going to be able to have dinner with my girlfriends? Like it is just a phase and you will get back to those places.
That spoke to my soul because we're in a mommy phase here right now, and it is no daddy with my oldest. I feel like I'm changing all of her diapers. I am her constant comfort. I have to get her out of the bath every night. I have to put her down. I have to read the book. And sometimes I'm like, I just need a break. Like my arms are tired because it's always mommy up, no daddy. And so hearing that, I mean, I love it. I'm flattered, but I also am like, I need
I need some time. And then one day she's going to be like, no, mommy, you don't exist. It's just daddy time.
Yeah. And I'm like, what happened?
You were my baby. What happened? It always happens. Like, I remember the one day where it's like my toddler, like, heard the door open and just like took off running. I was like, I've been with you all day. And just this little, hearing his footsteps just sent you into a frenzy, And I was like, okay, the baton has been passed. He's now daddy's baby.
How funny. Yeah, well, that's a really good reminder. So thank you.
Yeah, we need that. And Brandi, for everyone listening, because I know they're all going to want to follow you if they aren't already, how can they follow you? You have so many things that you're doing. Tell us just where everyone can find you.
Yeah.
All of that.
So you can find me on Instagram, and it is Brandi with an I _Jordan _official. I also have a podcast specifically to answer a lot of parenting questions, and that's Dear Doula. And you can find us at Dear Doula Podcast. And you can always email me at Brandi@The Cradle Company, and that's Brandi with an I and The Cradle Company spelled out.
Don't mind if I slide into your emails with questions.
Always. Now, I'm going to tell people now, if you tell me your life story, I'm not going to respond to that. But if you have quick questions, great. But start in present. Don't start when you were 7.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much. What a treat to have you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us on Between Us Moms.
Don't forget to follow us for more mom life conversations and content, and subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.
And if you liked this episode, send it to a mom friend.
You know she'll get it too.
See you next time.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.